Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Open Mic is a show that's just exactly what it sounds like. It's all open questions. See, every day on the John Campea Show, we take a few minutes for some live questions, but here on Open Mic, it's just, 45 minutes to an hour long of just all open topic discussions. Mostly like to focus on movies and entertainment, things like that, but the odd other questions okay too. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for all your well wishes. For those of you who may have missed it yesterday, kind of out of nowhere, I found out just like a couple days before, my mom had to go in for heart surgery. And yesterday was the scariest day ever for me. But from what I understand, everything went really well. She's resting now. So I feel a hell of a lot better. But I just want to take a second and say thank you to all of you guys who sent me tweets and messages and things like that and well wishes. It's greatly appreciated. It made me feel really good. So thank you for that very, very much. So with that, it was soppy stuff out of the way. Let's move on to some questions here today. And we're going to get things started with Luke1234, who writes, before you met Anne, was there ever a time when you swore off women? Like you were just tired of their shit and didn't want to bother with it anymore? No, I haven't, but I know lots of my friends and lots of my female friends have felt the same way about men. I'm sure everybody hits a point in romantic endeavors where they just kind of feel like, screw this, or what, like I'm sure everybody does. I'm fairly lucky that I haven't. And I've had one or two bad relationships, but even then, like even the bad relationships in my life just made me kind of appreciate good ones even more. So I got to say for myself, no, I've never been there, but I have lots of my friends, both male and female, who have both been there before. Believe you me, you're not alone in that. All right. ZOMG Ruler writes, I don't think DC needs a reboot yet, because Fast and the Furious franchise was divisive at first and made billions of dollars later on. Wish your mom a speedy recovery. Well, thank you for that, ZOMG. But I don't think you could compare the Fast and Furious franchise to the DC Cinematic Universe. And by the way, the first Fast and the Furious, despite the fact that I hated it, because I thought it was nothing but a second-rate knockoff of Point Break. That being said, most people love that movie. That's why there was a sequel. And that's why there was a number 3. And it was getting weaker. And then they kind of turned the corner, right? They turned the corner a little bit. And, they got The Rock involved later on. And things started to turn around for them. The DC Cinematic Universe is something completely different. It's with characters that everybody already knows and grew up with and beloved. Now, you may be somebody who's of the opinion that DC needs to reboot. You may not be. And that's whichever side you're on is fine, as long as we all understand we all want great DC movies. And I just think the best way for them to get there and to get the fans back on board is by rebooting. Again, I point to the fact that we have a number of issues of precedent that we've seen where comic book properties have rebooted and it's worked great. We've also seen a reboot and it not work great, a la Fantastic Four, right? But we've also seen reboots and it works great. So we have precedent that it can work and it can work really well. So look, as long as we're all on the same page that we all want good DC movies, just some of us think the best way to get there and to get all the fans back on board is to reboot. Something is the best way to get the fans back on board is just keep going ahead. Whatever your opinion is, that's fine. Mine just happens to be, I think the best way to get there and the most effective way to get there is to reboot the franchise. But I'm going to continue to feel that until they do something to change my mind. All right, next one comes to us from Josh Crichton, who writes, what are the positives and negatives of having a Patreon page? Because I'm about thinking of having one since me and my friend are writing books together. The advantages of a Patreon, there's a number of advantages to having a Patreon page. It gives the people who are your most hardcore supporters an avenue for actually, tangibly supporting you, which is always great. And it gives you as a creator a base of tangible support. Like flat out, I would not be able to do this channel or have Jonathan or Ray have jobs if it wasn't for my Patreon supporters. It just wouldn't happen. If I didn't know that stable base of support was there, I simply wouldn't be able to create. It's just that simple. I just wouldn't. So those are the advantages. I can't really think of any disadvantages off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I've had nothing but amazing experiences with all of my Patreon supporters. I have not had one single, and we've got over 700 Patreon supporters now. And the fact that I've never had one bad experience with a single one of them I think says a lot, at least not that I can think of off the top of my head. So yeah, I really can't think of any negatives for myself at any rate. Let's see. Donaldo Martinez writes, was it ever considered to have Star Trek movies with the crew of DS9 or Voyager after their series ended? No. I don't think anybody at Paramount ever gave any real thought to that. They were never popular enough. They never would have made it on the big screen. I mean, you could have made some pretty good movies, maybe. Could have made some awful movies, but you could have made good movies out of them, sure. I just don't think there were none of those shows like DS9, things like that. Well, I was a DS9 fan, especially once Worf got on the show. Or Voyager, things like that, Chakotay and whatever. While I like those shows, neither of them had, or later on, Star Trek Enterprise, didn't come anywhere near to the type of hardcore following that the original Star Trek and Next Generation had. So I think they knew they probably wouldn't have been able to stand up in movie theaters. They wouldn't have been able to actually make a dent. So no, I don't believe anybody at Paramount ever gave that any serious thought. To the best of my knowledge. Maybe somebody did. Who knows? Josh writes, I need a bobblehead of you, John. Thoughts? Well, there is a limited edition John and Ann Campea pop. I've shared that. I showed that to you guys before, but a bobblehead of me, I don't think anybody wants that. Adamus95 writes, just saw Aladdin live in London. Oh, wasn't it fun? Trevor Dion Nicholas is now my favorite genie, an amazing show, and wish it was him in Disney's live action adaptation. Well, you might not think that once you see the movie, because just because he's great doing that genie, the genie in the live action movie might be a little bit different, and maybe he wouldn't be a good fit for that, right? So just because it's good in one thing doesn't necessarily it'll be good in another. But yeah, I quite enjoyed, I mean, not nearly as much as Beauty and the Beast live or say Hamilton or things like that, but I did like the Aladdin production quite a bit actually. But the main reason I liked it was because of the genie. The genie just killed it for me. Now, actually, let me see if this is the same guy who played in the Los Angeles production of it. Because I know it's not playing Los Angeles anymore. Just indulge me for a second while I look him up here and see. And, yep, that's the same guy. And, yep, he was all kinds of awesome. He was great as the genie. And you know what? I never once felt like he was trying to be Robin Williams. I never once felt he was just trying to be Robin Williams or do a Robin Williams impersonation. He took that character Robin Williams created and the energy level and the charisma that Robin Williams brought to that character and then stood on that shoulders and kind of infused that character, that charisma, that charm, but with his own flavor and his own DNA. So it felt like he really did justice to the genie character without ever making it feel like he was just doing a Robin Williams impersonation. And one of the encouraging things about the live action movie is that I've heard Will Smith essentially say the same thing, that he's trying to infuse that level of charisma into the genie without doing a Robin Williams impersonation. And that's key. That's key. And that is something that he was able to do, that Trevor Dion was able to do in the live show. And here's hoping they can capture a little bit of that. Let's see. Josh writes, I watched Screen Junkie today, and they did a segment on Black Panther being taught in schools. What are your thoughts on this? Positive, negatives? Well, I didn't see that video, so I have no idea what the talking points are. I have no idea. So, I mean, it sounds like an interesting topic, but since I did not see the video you saw, I can't comment on it. So I have nothing to offer on that, unfortunately. Ben Rayner writes, John, I just wanted to share, I started a Star Wars Facebook group just a safe, fun place to talk Star Wars and show everyone good fandom is still alive. Well, good for you, Ben. That's awesome. And more people should be doing that. Where, all thoughts and opinions about Star Wars, within reason. Like whether you like Star Wars movies or not like Star Wars movies, without attacking each other for having your opinions, that's a key thing to have. Murray writes, there's actually 2 Dolby AMCs in New York City. Okay, so this is a follow-up because somebody asked, it might have been you, Murray, might have been somebody else, asked the other day about AMC Prime theaters and the AMC Dolby theaters and wondering, I think it was Phil Lee who was asking and mentioned that they didn't think there were any in New York City. And I said, well, I don't know for sure, but that seems hard to believe that there's not one in New York City. So anyway, Murray's following up. There are actually 2 Dolby AMCs in New York City, one in the Times Square. That's the most popular. By the way, that AMC in Times Square is the most popular movie theater in America. It is the busiest and most popular movie theater in America. At least it was back a number of years ago. Whether it still is, I'm not sure. But a couple of years ago, it was the #1 busiest movie theater in North America. Anyway, one in Times Square, awesome experience. The other one just opened recently at 34th Street near Garden. Hated the experience because the recliners barely went up all the way, like midway up, and it wasn't broken. Yeah, there are some. I've heard other people say that there are some of these theaters that have the reclining seats, but like the leg thing, instead of coming up like this, and I don't need recliners to go complete 90-degree angle, but some only go like that, you know? A little bit of impotence. Anyway, only come up like that. It's like, well, what's the point at that point, right? But anyway, Murray has settled the discussion. It appears there are Dolby Cinema AMC Primes in New York City, and I suspected there would be one at that one in what's the name of the damn place? Times Square. I've been to that theater a couple of times. I remember back in the day when I was with AMC, the first time I was ever at that AMC in Times Square. I was working with AMC at the time. And this is back before I decided that press junkets were useless. And we were doing a lot of press junkets. The problem was about 1 out of every 5, 6, or 7 movies, like 90% of the movies, so maybe 1 out of 10, but 90% of the movies do their film junkets, their press junkets in Los Angeles, but 10 to 15% of them do them in New York. So what was happening was we didn't have the budget, to fly somebody out to New York just to get a 3-minute interview. Like we weren't going to take one of our staff, lose them for a day and a half, have them fly 5 hours to New York City, 5 hours back, pay for a hotel, all that kind of stuff, just to get a 3-minute interview that might get 500 views, right? So we weren't going to do that. But we thought it's still a shame that we're missing out on these press junkets. So what we did was I flew out to New York and I put out an ad saying AMC, we're looking to hire a New York correspondent who can go and cover these press junkets for us. And so I got like 700 resumes came in. So I narrowed that down to about 20 or 25. I flew out to New York and we conducted the interviews at the AMC in Times Square. So, and I keep on wanting to call it the Empire Center, but I believe it's called the AMC Empire. That's what the name of the theater is, AMC Empire. So that was my first experience there. And I have never been in a movie theater like that. Like I've been in a movie theater, most movie theaters you go to, they have 1 floor. Some have 2. This one, I feel like it had like 7 floors. Maybe I'm not remembering, but it felt like it was like 7 stories to this movie theater. It was crazy. I'd never been in anything like that. Anyway, so I went and did our interviews there, and the rest is history. So that was my first experience at the AMC Empire in Times Square. Okay, let's move on here. Jerry Lawnberg writes, but John, just wanted to say it. If Vegas wins the Stanley Cup, it will be Marc-Andre Fleury's 3rd Stanley Cup in a row. In my opinion, Solo was awesome, and also I think anthology over Saga. Well, Marc-Andre Fleury, though, wasn't the starting goaltender for Pittsburgh last year. Yes, he was on the team, and yes, he gets a ring, but he wasn't like the starting. So it's a little bit skewed. It's a little bit skewed that way. I'm glad you love Solo. I quite enjoyed Solo. Like I said, I still feel like it was a little bit clunky. Especially in the beginning. I felt the first act was a bit clunky. Once it found its groove, I really enjoyed it. Once it got really more into the heist stuff, I really started to enjoy it. But I found the first act was a little bit clunky. But besides that, I thought it was quite good. Anthology over Saga, not for me personally, but if that's the way it works for you, that's totally fine if that's the way it works for you. Thanks for sharing that, Jerry. Ben Rayner writes, heard anything about Upgrade? I know it comes out this weekend, and I haven't seen any reviews for it. Is it a late embargo, bad sign? I'm not sure. Honestly, look, I know this. It is a small movie with a small budget and probably a tiny marketing budget. And like movies like that quite often won't even do press screenings. So just because they just don't have the time or the organization to do it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I'm not sure. I do know this. I'm going to go see Upgrade tonight. I'm seeing it tonight. And so watch for my review up either later tonight or sometime tomorrow afternoon. I'll have my review up for it. But I mean, that Red Band trailer smacked us all right across the face, right? That Red Band trailer came out of nowhere, because before that Red Band trailer, I think a lot of people had never even heard of this movie. I had barely heard the smallest thing about it, but put it out of my mind. 3 months later, out comes this Red Band trailer. It's like, holy crap, this thing's awesome. And it was just so good. So I'm seeing it tonight. Looking forward to seeing it. I'll have my review up a little bit later. Let's see. Murray writes. What did Murray write? Murray wrote, in response to Wednesday's open mic question, I've never had the issue of a Stubbs member, that I had to wait long to get my food. Sorry about your experience. By the way, that mobile ordering option sounds cool. Surprised New York City doesn't have it yet. So what it was somebody brought up on, I think it might have been yesterday's open mic. The idea is, why doesn't Regal, I think Regal's membership program is called the Crown membership or something like that. I don't know. I don't have a Regal right by me, so I very rarely go to a Regal cinema. Not that I have any problems with Regal cinemas. I've just very rarely gone because there's not one around me. So anyway, so I said, why don't they have an exclusive line for Crown Card members like AMC does for Stub members? Because you go to an AMC theater, if you're a Stubbs member, there's your own line for concessions. Like there's the general public line, but then there's your line. And what I mentioned on the show yesterday was that it sounds better than it really is, because even though I might get in the Stubbs line and be the 10th person in line, and my buddy will get in the general audience line and be like the 25th person in line, he might still get his food first, because more registers are open for the general line than for the Stubbs line. So maybe there's only 10 people in line, but there's only 2 registers. Whereas there's 5 registers for the general line, right? So even though there's fewer people in my line, you'll actually get through your line slower. So now granted, the AMC Burbank 16 is like the 3rd or 4th busiest movie theater in North America. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe in other places it works. Now, as far as the mobile ordering, we talked about that yesterday. You can use, I don't have my phone here with me right now. You can use your mobile app to buy your food in advance. So when you show up, your food's sitting there waiting for you. And I think one of the reasons they're doing it at the AMC Burbank 16 is as a test run. I think they're using the AMC Burbank 16 and 3 other theaters in the country as a test trial to see if this works. And all I know is that for me, love it. It's worked great for me. So I'm sure you're going to see it in New York soon enough. They'll work out the bugs with it with their Los Angeles and Arizona test run. Then once they've worked out the bugs in Arizona and Los Angeles, you'll probably see it nationwide. I'm guessing at any rate. All right. Thunder Knight 19 writes, prediction, Thanos is destroyed by a shrubbery by the Knights who say ni, for those of you who don't get the reference. Kevin Kamaki just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin. Raymond Vitar writes, Verada, writes, thoughts on Jennifer Garner's Peppermint trailer. Dude, just saw that like an hour ago. Awesome. It looks so awesome. Now, granted, I am predisposed generally to liking anything with Jennifer Garner because it's Jennifer Garner. She is my longest running celebrity crush of all time. So yeah, I completely adore Jennifer Garner. But honestly, I thought, look, I get a kick. I'm not a parent myself, but I get a kick out of like pissed off parent movies. Like, oh, you hurt that dude's kid. Oh man, you're so dead. Never mess with somebody's kid. But anyway, so watching, I got all the blood vessels going in this one, man. I saw this trailer. I loved it. It looks a little generic, like a little paint by numbers, 90s style, parental revenge kind of movie. Granted, yes, it does, but there's something good about that. And if you haven't seen this trailer, I'll probably be talking about it a little bit tomorrow on the John Campea show. But if you have not seen the trailer for this Peppermint movie, check it out. It's pretty fantastic. I got a huge kick out of it, man. I absolutely loved it. All right. James Peter writes, if a remake is good, is the original forgotten? Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Like, for example, take one of my great examples of like remakes is The Departed. The Departed is a remake, and it's a remake of the movie Infernal Affairs. Infernal Affairs, and I love The Departed. The Departed won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Won Martin Scorsese his first Academy Award. But Infernal Affairs is still my favorite. It's still my favorite. It's my all-time favorite cop movie of any kind. So no, now I just have 2 great movies on my digital collection that I can watch and enjoy anytime. I love The Departed. I love Infernal Affairs. And I can enjoy them both. So no, I don't think if a remake is good, the original is forgotten. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, unless the original is bad and they do a remake and redeem it, then maybe. But if the original is like classic, then it doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. It's still there and people can still like it. That's my opinion. I could be wrong about that. I could be completely wrong about that, but that's just my opinion. Hector Jeter writes, how's your mother doing? Hope all is well. From what I hear, all is going pretty well. And I guess what's going to happen is maybe in a couple of weeks, because now she's got to go to a rehab center. And without going into all the stupid details, one of the reason they caught the problem in her heart was because she was starting to have problems with her feet. And they discovered, after some misdiagnosis, they discovered she's getting no blood flow to her feet because of certain arteries being clogged and they needed to do bypass surgery. And so now she's going to go to some kind of a rehab center, just get her feet functioning again, get her legs functioning again, all that kind of stuff. So, talking to my dad, I called my dad the other day because, all my siblings and all my family, understandably, they're all worried about my mom. I was worried about my dad. I'll be honest with you, because I think my dad is a lot like me. Like when Anne goes away to she has to go to Hong Kong for work for 2 months. It's a coin toss as to whether or not she's going to come home, find me dead on the floor. I mean, seriously, I can't take care of myself. And I worry about my dad. So I gave my dad a call the other day and he just assumed I was calling about mother. I said, no, I know what's going on, Mom. I just want to know how you're doing, right? And start talking to my dad and just tell him I'm worried about you. But he gave the strong Italian dad answer. Oh, don't worry about me. I'm just worried about your mother, which is, of course, the strong Italian dad thing to say. But I worry about my dad. I do. So I'm thinking a couple of weeks, letting my mom recover a little bit, and then flying back home maybe for a week. So I might go a week without any shows, just because I want to go back home, check in on my dad, because my mom's probably going to be in this rehab place for a while. So visit her when she's more cognitive, spend some time with my dad. I'm sure my sisters and my brother are doing a great job taking care of my dad for sure. I'm talking about my dad as if he's some sort of invalid. He is a big scrapping man. Make no mistake about it. He's no invalid. He's just like me. If my wife suddenly disappears, I'm a little bit lost. So I think pretty soon I'll probably be taking a week off and go home and visit the family. Once, I want to give my mom a little bit of space. She's already got tons of family there, so I don't want to add to it. So I'm going to wait a week or two, then go in and when she's a little bit more up for having company. Let's put it that way. But thank you for asking, Hector. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Onif CSTU123 writes, which brother had it worse overall, Sam or Dean? Man, they have both had a rough ride. I will go, look, Dean was tortured in hell, but Sam was in the cage. Sam was in the cage with Lucifer and Michael. So I'm going to give the edge to who had it worse to Sammy. I'm going to go out on a ledge here and say out of the 2 brothers, Sammy probably had it worse for that one reason alone. Hector Jeter writes, the Stubbs premiere line in Vegas are never long, even during the busiest times. Usually I'd be the 4th in line in box office or the concession stand. That's good to know. That's actually really good to know, because I think before I go home to visit my family, I think I'm going to run out, because the World Series of Poker has just started in Las Vegas. For those of you who followed me for any period of time, I go and play in the World Series of Poker every year. So I'm thinking maybe even this weekend, maybe next weekend, I'm going to shoot it before I go home. I'm going to shoot out to Vegas for a couple of days, and maybe I'll shoot over to that AMC and check out a movie there, and maybe I can use that Stubbs line at the same time. So thanks for giving me that heads up, Hector. Let's see. Murray writes, just rename the Skyscraper movie to Die Hard. The Rock is in this one. I know, right? Don't get the first time I saw that trailer to Skyscraper, the one with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and a girl from Party of Five. Why am I forgetting the girl from Party of Five's name? And she was in the horror movie. I don't know why I'm forgetting her name. You know what? Just screw it. I'll just look it up. Hold on a second. Skyscraper IMDb. Okay. It's killing me that I'm forgetting her name because it's an easy name to remember. And I'm drawing a complete blank on Neve Campbell. Thank you so much. So, yeah, with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Neve Campbell. Interesting role to see her pop up. That's an odd place to see Neve Campbell pop up in. Anyway, I remember the first time I saw the trailer. It's a nice little trailer. But I remember thinking, is this a Die Hard reboot? I mean, clearly the story looks very, very different, but just on its surface. If you just put that trailer on mute, if you put the Skyscraper trailer on mute, and you hadn't seen it yet, and somebody said to you, this is a Die Hard remake, and you just watch the trailer on mute, having never seen it before, and somebody just told you it's a Die Hard remake, you would totally believe it. You would totally believe it. That doesn't mean the movie's not going to be great. Maybe it'll be fantastic. But that is exactly, Murray, what went through my head at the same time the first time I saw it was, is this Die Hard? But anyway, yeah. Okay. So next one comes us from Luna Comics, who writes, thanks for the words of wisdom, John. Now I know what to say to my grandmother, but I'll say it nicely because she's still family. Oh, you were talking about, Luna was asking the other day, she goes, she's got a grandmother who doesn't want to see any movies that has a gay character in it because she's got a thing against gay people. And so she was asking me, what would you say? And my answer to that was simply this. It's like, look, you can say you don't like the color blue, but that doesn't change the fact that there is blue everywhere around you. Blue is in our world. You can live in denial of it if you want, but don't expect me, if I'm a filmmaker, to hide blue in my movies just because you don't like the color blue. The blue is in my world. So if blue is in my shot, it's in my shot. If it's not in my shot, it's not in my shot. But don't expect the rest of us to rearrange the world just to fit how it is your preferences would be. Blue is in the world. It's a real thing. So you might as well just accept that it's there. To me, it's the same thing as getting angry at a movie that shows people with blonde hair. There are people out there who have blonde hair. You just got to accept it. You don't have to like blonde hair. But if you're going to shuffle yourself away into a dark corner to try to make sure you never see somebody with blonde hair, you're going to lead a pretty isolated life. And if you're sitting around waiting for the rest of us to change our world so that there's no blonde people around, that's not going to happen. It ain't the 1960s anymore. So anyway, that was my sort of thing of that. So I'm glad you found that helpful, Luna. Let's see here. Oops, had to jump. Give me a second. Where did Luna go? Luna. There it is. Luna writes, also, have you heard that Aquaman will get his traditional costume? Thoughts? I have not heard that. And also, what is his traditional costume? I mean, even in the comic books, Aquaman has had several different looks. So I'm really not quite sure. And I really doubt he's going to get the straight up traditional look. So maybe he's going to get a costume that is inspired by the traditional look. But again, I'm speaking completely, into empty air because I haven't heard that rumor myself. So I'm not aware of the exact specifics of it. But I would have to suspect it's probably going to be a costume that's inspired by the original look and not actually the original look, because that would kind of look really ridiculous. Anyway, let's see. Leandro Fonseca writes, on the Roseanne racist tweet, here in Brazil, she would have been arrested. What are your stands on free speech? I believe she should be fired, nothing more. Look, I've been saying what my particular view on this whole thing is this. Free speech is a two-way street. Free speech means you get to express your thoughts and opinions, as long as they're not things that incite harm to other people. Like, I can't say, I think people with red hair should be beat with sticks. Like, you can't say that. That's inciting violence. That's a crime. But expressing your thoughts and opinions and beliefs on things is an inherent human right, and it's a right that we have in our society. However, freedom of speech is not just one way. Freedom of speech is a two-way street. And freedom of speech is also manifested in the fact that I get to choose how I react to what your free speech is. I can have the choice to ignore you. I can have the choice to embrace you. I can have the choice to reject you. I can have that choice. And I also have the choice if I want to be identified with what it is you're saying, or if I don't want to be identified with what you're saying. That's part of free speech. ABC as a company, free speech for them means they get to choose whether or not they want to be associated with what it is Roseanne is saying. Roseanne has the right to say it, but then everybody else around her has the right to respond to what she's saying however they see fit. To embrace it, to reject it, to identify with it, or to refuse to be identified with it. When you say racist, hateful things, and you're associated with a company like ABC, ABC has the decision to make and the right to go, we don't want to be associated with that. We do not want to be associated by what it is you're spewing. So you have the right to get on Twitter and say what you want, but we have the right to separate ourselves from you. That's our right, and that's ABC's right. So, I mean, and the example I gave on this before is that back, let's say, when I was working with a corporate overlord, let's say back when I was working with AMC, and it was a very good company, and I liked working with them. If I decided to get on Twitter and I said, I don't know, everybody from Paraguay are idiots. Paraguay is nothing but a nation of idiots and whatever else and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I have the right to say that. If that's my opinion, I have the right to say it. But at that point, AMC can go, well, you know what? Not only do we disagree with what you're saying, we don't want to be associated with what you're saying. So thanks for working with us, John, but goodbye. That's totally would have been in the rights to do. So, hey, Roseanne has the right to say, and now she's backtracking, thankfully, and she is expressing remorse and regret for saying what she said, and that's a good thing. And here's hoping that somehow, some way down the line, she can recover, make amends, and get back on track. Great. That would be awesome. That would be a great redemption story. Love it. But for now, ABC has the right to go, you said something that we consider and a lot of people consider to be pretty awful, and we don't want to be associated with that. So we are going to separate ourselves from you. And that means you're not working with us. And that's their right. And that's the two-way street of free speech. That's the two-way street of free speech. Anyway, sorry, I went off on that for a while. Kern Dog writes, I asked a while ago, but never got to hear the answer. What is the worst type of argument people make when debating film? Oh, the worst one ever is you don't get it. That's the worst one ever. That is by far the worst one ever. When somebody says, I don't like this movie, and then you go to them, well, you just didn't get it then. No, they got it. They understood it. I know it might be hard for you or me to wrap our heads around that somebody else saw and understood the movie that we liked and not liked it. And then what we as human beings do is we make excuses for why somebody else liked or didn't like something that we liked or didn't like. And one of the worst ones ever is that phrase, you just don't understand it. No, I understood it. And believe me, I've had that argument thrown at me so many times talking about Blade Runner. Right? Like, I don't like the original Blade Runner. All my friends love the original Blade Runner. Everybody loves the original Blade Runner. I'm one of the odd ducks out. If I was anything but always completely honest with you guys, I would just say I love Blade Runner too, just so I could fit in. But to be honest, my honest opinion is I've never liked the film. I just haven't. I watched it, I understand it, and it just doesn't work for me. Okay, whatever. The number of times I've had people say to me, well, you just don't understand the movie then. No, I understood the movie, I just didn't like it. Just because you understood the movie and you liked it doesn't mean everybody else is going to like it too. Even if most people like it, doesn't mean everybody's going to like it too. And I've had to stop friends of mine, like in discussions about Star Wars, right? Like talking about the original, go back like 10 years, talking about the original trilogy. And people saying, Star Wars is just for kids. And then I've had a friend of mine, I remember being in this discussion, a friend of mine saying, you just don't understand. You don't understand sci-fi, and you don't understand the mythology. And I had to stop my friend. And I say, whoa, hold up there, Nate, hold up. They understand it, they just don't like it. And it's okay that they don't like it. So but by far, the worst thing ever The worst argument ever that always just makes me get this nervous twitch when I hear somebody say this, oh, you just don't get it. It's like, oh my God. And I've caught myself, and we're all guilty of this. I've caught myself saying, oh, like, I remember I myself in a discussion with somebody once saying, well, I just don't think maybe it takes more time to try to understand. And I caught myself and going, oh my God, did I just about say that? Like, we are all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. Present company excluded, but that is the worst. That is the worst. I mean, really, any kind of not being able to wrap your head around not being able to accept that other people may like something you dislike or may dislike something that you like, and our immediate reflex need to create an excuse for why the other person likes something or doesn't like something, that is one of the more rotten human traits in film fandom. And it's a human trait. It's not confined to any one's particular group or bubble of people. It is a human trait when it comes to film fans. We love something or hate something, and then we come across somebody who loves what we hate or hates what we love, and our first response, since we feel that their love of something we hate is somehow an invalidation of my feelings, and it's not. But our natural human response is to then make excuses why that person hates what we love or why that person loves what we hate. So we make excuses, right? You're just saying that because you don't understand it. Or you're just saying that because you're this. Or you're only saying that because of that. And it's a mark of human weakness. If you show me somebody who's making excuses for other people's opinions, I'll show you somebody who's weak. But it is a human tendency of weakness. We all have that gut instinct to make excuses because we feel like somebody else having a different opinion than us somehow attacks the fact that we hold the opinion we hold. And it's something we need to get over. And it's a human thing. It's a natural reflex. It's like a defense mechanism, right? And it's something we need to get over. And we're seeing that express itself a lot. In Star Wars, like on the one side, anybody daring, there are idiotic, homophobic, racist, sexists who don't like The Last Jedi, but they're the minority of people who don't like The Last Jedi. So we've got to just because somebody comes out and says they don't like The Last Jedi, you got to resist the urge, because I've seen some people going, oh, if you didn't like The Last Jedi, then you're just a sexist. What? Time out. That's, first of all, that's not fair. And second of all, that's not true. So time out on that. Or, the other way, you did like The Last Jedi, then you're this or that or the other thing. Or something I get all the time, or you're paid off, right? And it's like, no, time out. No. I just liked something that you didn't. And I know you're having a hard time dealing with that, but it's fine. Don't go calling somebody else who didn't like The Last Jedi sexist just because they didn't like The Last Jedi. I mean, if they say, I didn't like The Last Jedi, why'd they put a woman in the lead? Okay, then you're probably dealing with a sexist. But the majority of people who didn't like Last Jedi are not like that. So don't jump to conclusions and start pointing fingers at people who don't like Last Jedi and going, oh, then you just must automatically be a sexist. That's not true. It's not fair. Time out. It's not fair, and it's not true. But it is a human response. That's one of the more unfortunate traits that we as film fans and human beings have. And we need to get past it. And the way we start getting past it is calling out people on our own side. So, and look, if you're somebody who doesn't like The Last Jedi, the next time you see one of your friends who doesn't like The Last Jedi making an excuse for why somebody does, step in and say, whoa, time out. That's what you're saying isn't true and makes no sense. If you're somebody who loves The Last Jedi and you got somebody else who loves The Last Jedi and you come across somebody who doesn't, who just automatically goes right to the racist or sexist thing, call them out for saying, whoa, time out. Did that person say something racist or sexist? No? Then why would you just assume that they're a racist or a sexist? So it goes across the whole spectrum, but it is something that we all do. But yes, that all comes back to that first thing of the most annoying argument I ever hear anybody try to make is the core starting cause of making excuses for why other people don't think the way you do. You just don't get it. That's the one to me that's always driven me the most crazy. Okay. Go Kings Go 83 writes, as a poker player and love of Texas Hold'em and film, Rounders to me is the best made poker movie to date. Movie Club, maybe? Possibly. I mean, that could be one. I don't know that enough people have watched it. I do love it. My favorite poker movie is actually The Grand with Woody Harrelson. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's damn funny. It's a really, really funny. And now, even Rounders isn't really accurate. I mean, it's as accurate a depiction of the world of poker as a movie will be. The Grand is different, accurate, but different. Accurate in a different way, you know what I mean? But The Grand is more of a comedy. If you haven't seen The Grand, I highly, highly, highly suggest you check it out because it's a great poker movie. Like I said, Woody, it's got a great cast too. Hold on a second. Let me just pull up the Grand. Where did it go? Let me see here if I can find it here because there's so many movies called. Damn it, that's the wrong one. I'll say, I know we're sitting here. Okay, sorry. This is taking me, but I gotta find this on Woody Harrelson's IMDb page. Zombieland, Defender, Messenger, 7-Pound Surfer, Semi-Press. There it is, The Grand. Okay, 2007, The Grand. Sorry for all that. It's got David Cross, Dennis Farina, rest his soul, Richard Kind, Chris Parnell, Werner Herzog, Jason Alexander, Ray Romano, Judy Geer, Gabe Kaplan. It is a fabulous movie. But the great documentary filmmaker, Werner Herzog, he plays this psychotic poker player, like this homicidal psychotic poker player, which is just hilarious. So if you haven't seen The Grand, I highly recommend. It's a simple little movie. I don't even know if that had ever had a theatrical distribution, but it's so worth an hour and a half to sit down and watch. I really dig it. Now, I don't know, if you're not a poker player, maybe you won't enjoy it as much, but I got a big kick out of it. Lawrence RBE writes, I was thinking about this the other day. What will you do differently when Avengers 4 drops next year in terms of how you cover it? Thanks for the 6 volumes. Yeah, so what happened was Avengers 3 comes out. And we did a spoiler review for it, right? The thing is, so many comments and questions came in. I think somebody said they added it up and it came out to like 9+ hours. So many questions came in that I literally had to do it in 6 parts. It was nuts. 2 of them were live, right? But the next 4 parts was just getting caught up on all the questions that had been sent in during the first 2 parts. It was crazy. So what will I do differently for Avengers 4? I mean, I don't know. On the one hand, it was really fun. So I might just do it the exact same way, but maybe try to come up with a way to get through it faster. I mean, I don't know. But fortunately, I got a whole year before I have to worry about that. By the way, I have received a number of messages from people on my Patreon page. Everybody knows why I didn't do a solo spoiler discussion video. I am considering doing one now, just because everybody seems to want to talk about it. So I am considering doing a solo spoiler discussion video this weekend. I will make up my mind tonight for sure, and then I'll announce it tomorrow if we're doing it or not, but we may do one this weekend. So if you have a thought on whether it's already been out for a couple of weeks, John, don't bother, or yes, we've been waiting to talk about this, whichever way, email me. Just email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and let me know what you think, which way we should go on that. Okay, Aussie Nerd writes, I lost my love of movies and got so angry all the time because people didn't agree with me, and I took it so personally it was awful. I am past that now, and it's a lot better. But see, that's what we're talking about, Ozzy, right? It's that natural human tendency that here's what happens. This is an unfortunate human trait in us as film fans. But we get so attached to our opinions about movies that when somebody disagrees with one of our opinions about movies, what we mistakenly do is we interpret that as an attack against us. Like, oh my God, I love The Grand. And somebody comes along and says, but I hated The Grand. All they're doing is giving their opinion on a movie, and my natural human inclination, and this is of all of us, is to take that as an attack against me. You're attacking me. By disagreeing with my opinion about that movie, You are attacking me. That's how we take it. None of us will admit that, but that is how a lot of us take it, right? And I think you just gave a great example of that, Ozzy, is that, you get so into movies and you love movies so much that sometimes if you don't put that in check, you hear people disagreeing with you about a movie, you take that very personally. Like, it took me a while and this was years ago, like over 10 years ago, but it took me a while then when somebody said to me, I hate Star Wars. Like, of course, when I'm like 20, I'm like, how dare you burn them with fire? That's kind of my burn them with fire for saying that. It took me a while to get past that and just go, oh, you don't like Star Wars? That sucks, man. I love it. I wish you had the same love of it too, But because our natural inclination is when somebody says something about a movie that's completely opposite of what we think, we take that as an attack against our opinion, and we take that as an attack against us. And really, it's neither. Somebody having a different opinion than you is not attacking your opinion, and it is not an attack against you, nor is you having a different opinion from them, you attacking them. You just have a different opinion. But unfortunately, like we talked about a little bit earlier, we take it personally, we interpret different opinions as attacking us, and therefore we feel the need to lash out and attack back. And that's something we got to get over. And that's something the film fandom has to get over. But that's awesome that you were able to move past that. And really awesome that you were able to talk about that, Ozzy. That's really cool. I admire that. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Luna Comics writes, John, how do I, as a writer, make sure I don't force a message like Star Wars Last Jedi? Do I say the message in an open discussion, or do a subtle metaphor? And how subtle is subtle enough? And my hopes go to your mom. Well, thank you for that. I'll be honest with you, Luna, I'm not sure what it is you're asking. How do I, as a writer, make sure I don't force a message like Star Wars Last Jedi? I didn't think Star Wars Last Jedi had any message that was being forced, to be honest with you. I didn't see any message in Star Wars Last Jedi, but so since I'm not really clear on what it is you're asking, Luna, subtlety is always best, depending on the forum. Subtlety is best depending on the forum you're in. So again, since I'm not really clear on what it is you're asking, maybe if you gave me a more specific example or circumstance, I might be able to give a more coherent, intelligent answer. Not that I often give coherent or intelligent answers. But yeah, I'm not really clear on that. So I can't offer much, except I'll just say, from what I'm able to gather from messages, always err towards subtlety. If you can, err towards subtlety if you can. But then again, it all depends on your forum, on your platform. It'll vary from place to place. But from what little I'm able to gather from a message, I say err on the side of subtlety. Everett Bachara writes, what does the Campea 5 a.m. workout routine look like? Well, thankfully, the 5 a.m. workout routine has been moved to 5:30 because I moved the John Campea show to 8:30. So we were able to move up a while ago. I was able to move up the 5 a.m. work. So the alarm goes off about 5:15 and wakes me up, says time to go. And then I say, no, I'm just going to stay in bed. And Ann says, get up. And I'll go, yeah. And then I fall back asleep. Then Ann says, get up. And then I get up. So that's pretty much the same routine every morning. We go to a local gym over here, Planet Fitness. They have a VIP area. And it's really cheap, but they have these hydro massage beds. So the very first thing I do every morning when I get to the gym is I use the hydro massage bed. Oh my God, it feels so good. Anyway, so I do that first. Then I just do basic circuit training. I just do basically one of every exercise. And I'm out of there in about 40 minutes. And then I'll show it to you sometime when I do a tour of my office, but I have a treadmill desk. So it's a treadmill with a full desk, and I've got 2 monitors on it, my laptop, speakers, my phone charger, and when I'm actually just writing and working that way, I'm just on my treadmill the whole time. So I'm walking a couple hours a day on top of that. So that's generally what my workouts look like. What I really miss is when Ann and I lived in Corona, I used to do everything from there. We had our UFC gym there, but I had to stop going to the UFC gym where I had my heart attack, which was kind of crazy. Anyway, James Argenta writes, Star Wars Celebration site announced the Wintrust Arena will be the main stage and it can hold over 10,000 people. That's awesome. I still don't know if I'm planning on going. Again, generally lost a lot of my love for the Star Wars fandom and everything. But it's funny because my brother-in-law just called us the other day, because my brother-in-law, who is also Canadian, he's married to Anne's sister, and is also a major Star Wars fan, was like, should we make plans to go to Star Wars Celebration together? So I don't know. I'm thinking about it, but I doubt I'm going to go this year. Let's see. Chris Warden writes, last I checked, studios are in the business of giving away money. So it just baffles me when people say they only keep 50% of the box office. By that math, Disney has given up almost $2.5 billion to theaters since purchasing Star Wars. Yeah, I keep seeing people saying roughly half. It's, from what I understand, it's roughly a third. But the truth is probably somewhere between a third and a half. But the reality is that's the reality. And it's not the studio giving away money. It's where else the movie's going to play. Where else the movie's going to play. They got to play in theaters. So theaters got to keep some of that ticket money. And they roughly keep 1/3 of it. Now, some people say it's closer to a half. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But a good, just general water benchmark is probably around 1/3, maybe a little bit more. But of course they do. Of course theaters have. Where else do you expect theaters to get the money? There's a reason theaters, if they didn't keep anything, they would have to charge you $25 for a bucket of popcorn instead of $11, which is already too outrageous. But they got to pay the bills somehow. So, yes, They have to, they don't give that money away. The theaters just keep it. So the theaters are the one who are generating the money, and then they give a big chunk of it back to the studios, but they get to keep some of it. And so that's just the way it is. That's how the industry works, my friend. Let's see. Chris follows up with, call me naive, but in my opinion, Bob Iger and Alan Horn would be fired on the spot for agreeing to a deal like that. Chris, that's the movie business. That's the movie business. You have no choice but to agree to that. That's what it is. If any studio tried to say to the movie theaters, we're only going to let you keep 5%, the movie theaters would go, well, bye. Have fun showing your movie nowhere. Bye. We'll put it straight to home video. Great. Enjoy only getting 20% of the money that you would have got if you put it in theaters. Bye. That's the way it works, Chris. That's the business. How do you think the movie theaters keep their doors open? Do you think they grow marijuana on their roofs and sell it to the customers, and that's how they pay their bills? I mean, really, that's it. A big chunk. The theaters keep a big chunk of the money. I mean, the majority of the money goes back to the studios, yes, but the theaters keep a big chunk of the money. And that's the way it works with every movie theater. How else do you? That's how they pay their bills. Warrington Train Spotter writes, hey, John, hope you're well. Thank you so much. Just wondered how your mom got on with her operation. Hope she is well. Peace to you and your family. As we already talked about, she's doing well, and I really appreciate the well wishes, Warrington. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Tamus Yusuf writes, Expanse and Colony, two massively underrated shows, and I haven't watched either. I haven't watched either of them. I've had, I know Expanse didn't it just go through the drama that it got canceled and then another network just saved it or something along those lines? But again, I haven't seen either of them. Let's see. Could CW get Lucifer put in the Arrowverse? I don't know. I don't see that as a good fit. I mean, it's not the most ridiculous notion. It's certainly not the most ridiculous notion. But, I mean, with the way... Since you already have Constantine in there and they're already portraying demons and the devil a certain way, Lucifer does not fit that mold. So it would be kind of completely contradictory to anything that the CW is already kind of doing with that. So on that level, I'll probably say no. But hey, maybe they can come up with a creative way around that. I mean, who knows? Anything's possible if you get the right creative minds on it. Donaldo Martinez writes, thoughts on Edward James Olmos as a director? He directed and starred in American Me. I am not familiar with American Me. Hold on a second. Edward James Olmos. First of all, I love Edward James Olmos. I mean, that you can put him in anything. He's got one of the most powerful presences anywhere. Like, he just did a small part on with the Netflix Pablo Escobar show, Narcos. On Narcos. And he was awesome in it. So hold on a second here. Let me see what he directed. It says he directed a number of things here. He Oh, you're talking like the 1992 movie? He also directed a couple of episodes of Battlestar Galactica. I didn't realize that. Oh, that one. Oh, you know what? I did see American Me, but I think I saw it like once, like 20 years ago. So I've got very, very little recollection of it, to be quite frank with you. But so since I can't even remember it really all that well, I can't give it an opinion. And I'm not sure which episodes of Battlestar Galactica he directed. So I right now I can't give an honest opinion because I don't recall the film well enough. Krieger119 writes, Dolby's not marketed as Prime anymore. There is no difference. Dolby is Prime, and both New York locations are too tight. I recommend the Port Chester, New York location. Well, they might be the same in New York, but I do think there's some differences elsewhere. I could be wrong about that. But I think there are some differences elsewhere. But Port Chester, New York, I've never even heard of. I grew up just across the border in Canada there. I've never heard of Port Chester, New York. I don't know where that is, but maybe I'll check it out the next time I'm in New York. Liban and Night Owl both just send in super chats. Thank you so much, guys. And we just have a couple of minutes left here. I may or may not get through all the questions. If I don't get through all the questions, don't worry. I'll take whatever questions I don't get around to, and I'll add it to the next companion video. Okay. Everett Bachara writes, do you think Reeves and Warner Brothers haven't locked down the villain of Batman yet because of the regime changes? If that's the case, what do you make of it? Well, look, there's a couple of things about that. Number one, that Variety reporter could be wrong. I mean, that's got to be the first and foremost thing we should keep in mind, is that there's nothing saying that thing that the Variety reporter said was absolutely true. I mean, I'm sure he's not lying, but maybe he's incorrect. Maybe he's getting bad information. All that kind of stuff. So that's got to be the first and foremost thing we always got to put out there. Other than that, I don't know what excuse you could have. I don't care if you've been working on it for 16 months. I don't care if you've been working on it for 6 months. There's no excuse for being 6 months into developing a movie and not even knowing who your major characters are. Like, because that's your step one. Who are your characters? Then you build your story. So, I mean, I really don't know. If it has anything to do with the regime change, I really hope it's not a matter. My biggest fear here is that from the tweets that the Variety guy put out, my biggest fear is that Matt Reeves had a plan. It included the Penguin. And now Warner Brothers is saying, wait a minute, we might not want you to use Penguin. We might want to use Penguin and Birds of Prey. And if that's the case, get off his toes. Give the dude some space. And if you didn't want him to use the Penguin, you should have told him that a year ago. So he didn't come up with a story involving the Penguin. You know, that's my big... So there's several fears I have. I put out a video about it, and I talked about it on the John Campea show earlier today. But then again, it's important to note that the first thing we should keep in mind is maybe that report wasn't true, or is inaccurate. Maybe it's inaccurate. So let's just hold off a little bit for now. KW Garrett writes, suggestion for a revisit review: Sneakers with Robert Ford, Sidney Poitier, River Phoenix. Classic, and Dan Aykroyd, I believe, is in that one too. Classic heist movie. I love rewatching. Dan Aykroyd, best role. I love that movie. Sneakers is brilliant. It is a brilliant movie. Might be my favorite Robert Redford movie, actually. And the bad guy is Sir Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley's the bad guy in it. And he's awesome in it. I love that one. That's a great candidate for a revisit review, absolutely. Let's see. Worst actress, Megan Fox or Jessica Alba? You know what? Both have become not bad. Never would have thought there'd be an era or a time when I would say that, but Megan Fox has become not bad. The last couple things I've seen her do, she's evolved. She has evolved. Same thing with Jessica Alba. She used to be terrible. One of the prettiest women in Hollywood, but not such a good actress. But you know what? The last couple things, and she hasn't done a lot, but lately. But the last couple things I did see her in, I remember thinking, she's gotten better. And so I'm going to take a pass on the question. I'm going to take a pass on it because I actually think both of them have evolved a little bit. So I don't want to label either of them as worst. You know what I mean? I think they've both improved. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Let's see. Maurice Cook writes, hey, John. Hey, Maurice. What is thoughts if MCU make a She-Hulk and make it like Deadpool, a rated R movie? Nah. Somebody else asked me about a She-Hulk movie the other day, too derivative. It's fine in the comic books. It's too derivative. I do not think it would go over well as a motion picture. So personally, I'll take a pass on She-Hulk. I'm not saying she's not a great comic book character. She is. But it's just, I don't want to see a derivative characters. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm going to take a pass on that myself. Kendall Baker writes, thoughts on the new trailer for Jack Black's The House with a Clock in Its Walls. Looks crazy, but possibly great. I was not thrilled with the trailer. It was just, yeah, for whatever reason, that trailer didn't work for me. And it is really twisty. Like, and I don't know if that's just bad trailer making. I don't know if that's just because it's a bad trailer or what have you, but I got to admit, it didn't work for me. That trailer didn't work for me all that much. Kendall Barker writes, the CG animals in Mowgli trailer have that uncanny valley, Mars needs mom look to me, but the actor portrayal Mowgli fits the role better versus the Disney one. Well, I mean, fits the role depending on what you want the role to be. The kid, for the Mowgli they had in Jungle Book, that kid was perfect for that Mowgli. That kid was perfect for that Mowgli. And the type of Mowgli and the type of movie they seem to be telling for the movie Mowgli, this kid seems better suited for this one. So it really depends on the movie and which is the better fit, right? That kid in Jungle Book was the better fit for that version of Mowgli. This kid seems to be a better fit for this version of Mowgli. We'll have to see. The animals look great. There's a lot of good things about it. I still can't shake that. Is this movie really necessary? Then again, no movie's necessary. But I feel like I just saw this movie. Didn't we just see this movie? So it's still weird that it's being made, but I'm a big fan of Andy Serkis, and he's directing it. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see how it turns out. Fingers crossed. Lunar Comics writes, I hate it when people say you just can't accept it's a bad film or stupid people thinks it's good. I mean, yeah, and again, that just goes back to the whole thing we were talking about earlier, that people's natural reaction is to make excuses for other people not having the same opinion as them. You know, if they think a movie's a bad movie and you like it, then one of the common excuses are, you just can't accept that it's bad. No, you just can't accept that other people will have a different opinion of it than you. But that is another one of the natural kind of lash outs that people have. You know, that's what people do. They make excuses for other people thinking differently about movies than they do. You just can't accept that it's good. You just don't understand it, or not accepting that you think a movie is bad that they think is good. You just don't understand. I mean, it just goes back to what we were talking about before. It's kind of the same thing. Let's see. Luna Comics writes, how do you make a message subtle? Oh, that's a 3-hour-long discussion, Luna. It really all depends, again, on the platform, on what the message is, on what the topic is. I mean, again, that's not something I could answer here in 15 seconds. It's a grand conversation to have, but it's not one you can do here in 15 seconds. It's just way too big of a thing. I appreciate that you're asking, but it's just way too big of a thing. And the final question today, as we've gone overtime, comes to us from Kevin Campbell, who writes, do you think we'll see a 6th Pirates of the Caribbean? Would like to see one more to wrap up the story. I don't know if we will. Like, the last one made some money. Like, let me just pull it up here. Pirates of the Caribbean 5 box office. Hold a second here. So, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell New Tales made almost $800 million at the box office. It made a lot of money. So you could, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't hate this one. I've hated most of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I didn't hate this one. I didn't think it was great, but I certainly didn't hate it. I didn't think it was a terrible movie. It had some terrible things in it, but it had a lot of things going for it as well. I wouldn't be opposed, let's put it that way, I wouldn't be opposed to another one, and I think you can make a financial argument for making another one. Like I said, this one made almost $95 million. It's almost $800 million bucks. That movie made them a lot of money. So there's a business case for it, and I didn't think the last one was all that terrible. So let's put it this way. I don't know that I would greenlight one, but I'd be open to it. As a film fan, I think I'd be open to the idea of another Pirates of the Caribbean movie. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Listen, one more time, make sure you guys are following me on Twitter if you're not already. Just follow me on Twitter. You can see it right there at John Campea. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me, and until our next video, bye-bye.